Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. I apologize for the hiatus. Didn't plan to. Had a very busy work week. Had some personal stuff to deal with, and then at the end, I actually got a little bit sick. So, if my nose makes a little bit too much noise, that's why. I apologize for that. However, I really wanted to stream today because, well, there's been a lot of accumulated stuff, a lot of things happening with Apple directly. In fact, we have two Apple newsroom reports to go through. So, actual news, not just rumors. We also have a lot of stuff happening in the world of their competition. We have Android 16 being officially announced with a new redesign. We have new Sony headphones that at this point, while I am a fan of AirPods Max conceptually, it's really hard to recommend them while the competition keeps getting better and better and better. So we're gonna cover all of that. Of course, the flagship story, and let's get right into it, is actually, and I have to preface this is not the most like hard rumor stuff I'm gonna discuss, right? Usually. So this is pretty soft, like UX1122, like he's a supply chain leaker. Not the greatest track record, but still a little bit of a track record. So this person came out and commented on the weight and so the supposed battery capacity of the upcoming iPhone 17 Air, right? I want to put this rumor in the context of all the other rumors that we've heard thus far with the iPhone 17 Air, especially regarding its battery, all the software battery stuff coming in iOS 19, the fact that there is like a rumored battery case return specifically for the iPhone 17 Air, maybe not exclusively. I assume it will be compatible with all MagSafe iPhones, but still, right? And of course, contrasting that with the older rumor, which has been reaffirmed a couple of times by now, with the fact that the iPhone 17 Air is actually supposed to debut a very high density battery technology. So all of this is going to be pretty interesting. And I'm going to try to contrast all of that. And this will actually be the start of the today's stream with the Galaxy S25 Edge being official. Now, as far as I understand, also being in the hands of reviewers. Right now, we're getting a lot of hands-on impressions, even some very rudimentary battery life tests that are not great. They suggest it's literally like 15-20% less than the Galaxy S25 Plus, which will make sense once you see the battery capacity. Yeah, but that's kind of the broad outline for today's stream. It might get really long, so I hope you enjoy it. And before we get fully started, a small shout out for you to do the YouTube jazz, as we call it around here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. Like the video, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it, and comment. You guys know I love interacting with a lively comment section, getting your opinions, your agreements, your disagreements. So that will be a big help. You can leave a donation in the form of a super chat or a super sticker right in the live chat, and you can become a channel member right here on YouTube. Shout out to Steve, Angelica, and Max Maximus, who are MarkCheck Pro Max supporters right here on YouTube. And you can also become a supporter over on Patreon. The link for that is in the description of the channel. We actually have two of our MarkCheck Pro Max supporters already in the chat. Steve sending, I believe it's a membership milestone chat for 6 months. So thank you for the continued support. Saying have a good stream, man. We'll try to join later. Well, thank you for being such a long-term supporter. I know my streaming time isn't always very like regular in terms of like at what time of day I stream and everything, so I still appreciate it a lot when you guys still find me. I will try to stream roughly at 6 p.m. German time, so that can mean like 5:30 p.m. It can mean like today 6:30 p.m. right, somewhere around that. But yeah, it will depend a little bit on my work schedule, personal time, stuff like that. And Angelica joining the stream saying she's joining us and she's happy that I invited you guys all back. Well, yeah, would have loved to do it sooner, but thank you so much. Hope you're enjoying the stream. And as always, please let me know if the audio and video quality is all right for you, if the stream is stable. You guys know I get pretty paranoid about that. So let's get started with the first of two MKBHD videos we're gonna be reacting to today.
All right, this is it. Your official first look at and hands-on with...
So the design is actually pretty much what was shown off initially. I admit I was a little bit wrong here. I thought when Samsung initially showed the Galaxy S25 Edge that it might yet be subject to a little bit of change. And Riley joining the chat, hi to you. Always great that you can find the streams. And yeah, by the way, last shout out for all of you guys, hit the notification bell, because that is apparently the biggest thing in knowing when I'm actually going live. Yeah, so I suspected that the Galaxy S25 Edge design might be a little bit subject to change from what we saw in the initial Galaxy S25 presentation, but here it is, and it's pretty much exactly what they showed there. It's not a very inspired design, honestly, especially with the price. I just don't think this device has any chance in the current market. Like, the Galaxy S25 Plus is better, simply, right? For a little bit more weight, okay, and actually costs less at this point. And the Galaxy S25 Ultra is way better and costs the same at this point, because obviously it has come down from its $12.99 MSRP. And Rosa joining the chat. Thank you guys so much for finding the stream today. Really glad. I know YouTube is going to punish me for my long hiatuses. I will be on a somewhat regular schedule from this point on. So I've dealt with what I ever had to deal with. So I will let you know if there are any big hiatuses planned again, but I am actually pretty optimistic and for the next 3-4 months being able to stream pretty regularly.
with the...
And of course, I will be especially streaming around the time of WWDC, all those kinds of announcements. That is very important to me. I will also be trying to live stream the DubDub main keynote, obviously just with my face. Apple doesn't allow me to actually show you DubDub. I know it's not always the most popular video because you guys actually want to watch DubDub yourself, but yeah, that's a little bit of an outlook into next month for you.
Samsung Galaxy S25 Edge. Samsung's ridiculously thin...
So, very thin. Really noticeable, actually. You guys can see how, like, the camera bump is actually designed to almost, like, bridge the gap perfectly, right? It should be noted that the cameras are not exactly the same. So, from what I understand, the 200 megapixel main shooter has some optical differences. And it does perform worse in like very initial showings. But I believe the sensor is the same. So this is actually going to be interesting if Apple has to make similar compromises. Now, Apple's camera bump looks even bigger when you look at the initial dummies built around the iPhone 17 Air. But those dummies, like, it's hard to tell, like 0.1 millimeters here and there is not really the biggest difference you can spot with your eye in a YouTube video. So it's going to be interesting if Apple might do similar compromises, like use technically the same main camera, but then have a compromised optical system on top of it, for example. Riley, sounds like the streams are about to get better again. Yeah, both the quality of the streams is going to get better because the more regularly I stream, the simply it's easier for me to get into it, right? Even I've been feeling better for about 2 days, but I was very low energy, like when it comes to wanting to do a stream. And simply the more I stream, the more fun I actually have streaming. So the quality is about to get better because I'm about to be more enthusiastic, and the streams are about to be more regular, which helps you guys join. And of course, it helps the YouTube algorithm, and it helps with the actual content because we are approaching DubDub. We have I believe today the Microsoft Developer Conference. I believe they call it Build something. We have the Google I/O coming up, though I'm not gonna live stream it. It's just gonna be an AI fest. I will be reacting to more Android 16 news though, which will actually start today. So plenty of topics today and to come.
Addition to the S25 lineup. So this is delayed a bit, and the rest of the lineup has been out for a while since earlier this year, but I just know somewhere out there was somebody who was waiting for the thinnest possible version of an S25. Just the minimum Z-axis dimension. This person totally exists. And good news for this person.
Well, I would say there are enthusiasts who are interested in like the design aspect first, like before actually like battery capacity, cameras, right? I mean, don't forget, we are like, this is thicker in so many ways than like an iPhone 5 and 5S, for example, right? And even than an iPhone 6. But fundamentally, it is a similar appeal. It's why we had that fight that I often bring up between like the Galaxy S4 and the iPhone 4 at the time, where the question was like, which one was the thinnest, right? The iPhone 4 was slightly thicker at its thickest it was slightly thicker for most of its Z-axis, right? But it didn't have like bumps. While the Galaxy S4, was it the 5 at that point? Oh, the Galaxy S2, I'm sorry. I always forget. I always try to align them up with the name. It was the Galaxy S2. But the Galaxy S2 had that bump on the back, right? But it was overall mostly thinner. So it was like the fight, who actually has the thinnest smartphone? And we are kind of back to that. Not with the flagships, because most people still care about battery life, cameras, display brightness, all the things that might get compromised by a thinner device. But overall, it's an aspect of smartphones that still people care about.
It does actually seem to be a pretty good phone for as thin as it is, if you're into that. So what I was really wondering about this phone when it was first revealed or teased was, how are they going to position this? Is this going to be some ultra high-end phone where they make a huge deal?
And I have to say, they positioned it wrongly. And it's really just a question of like, the Galaxy S25 Edge is not really supposed to be like it's not going to be a staple of the actual lineup in the future. There are rumors that they are building a Galaxy S26 Edge, right? So they will have a successor. But I just, man, with the flips and folds in the lineup, like I know they plan to remove like the smallest Galaxy, but at that point, every Galaxy will be like a 6.6-inch device at the very least. It's really like, if this was an $899 product, and I will give you reasons for why it actually could have been that, but for a $1099 device, ugh, yikes. Let's continue.
Hype up how thin it is, and they broke physics to make this possible. And it turns out the answer, which kind of makes sense, is it's right between the base S25 and S25 Plus and the S25 Ultra. So the theoretical customer for this phone is making like a half step up from the base phones, but not going all the way to the Ultra. So you can
in what way though?
Think of this S25 Edge here as basically an S25 Ultra Lite, if that makes sense. It still has the titanium rails from the Ultra.
That by the way, this is an interesting design choice. I assume they really had, first of all, they had some titanium lying around because the Galaxy S Ultras are selling really well, but probably still not enough to sell to like literally saturate all the all internal like titanium supply that Samsung might have ordered. And I also assume, and this is probably the more important point, is that this device was really fragile in testing. So it debuts a new Gorilla Glass technology and the titanium chassis for the first time on a non-Ultra product. Yes, all of those things will bump up the price, but at what cost at that point, right?
Ultra phone, it's in one of three stunningly vibrant colors, black, silver, or slightly bluish silver.
Slightly
but then they
bluish.
also took...
And once again, the titanium side rails are not even matched blue, which is so fucking stupid.
Primary camera, the 200 megapixel huge sensor from that Ultra phone, plus plus all the software and image processing that comes with it. Then the second camera is a 12 megapixel ultra wide. No telephoto here.
Yeah,
and
so
then
this is technically like very similar main camera to the Ultra, but now the ultra wide is at least like a gen or two old. It's a weird hybrid here of tech that is being put inside it. Like, I wonder why not just make it, I don't know, like 6.2 millimeters, at which point you have dramatically more internal space, right? It's 8% thicker, but don't forget that's thickness where the glass, the chassis, and both sides of the glass are actually still the same thickness. So for internal components, it could literally result in like 20% more. And while sure, some might say, well, now it's not actually going to come close to the new iPhone. Does it really have to? Who is really comparing the difference between like 5.56 millimeters versus 6.2? At that point, I would actually be inclined to believe that people would say, oh, Samsung made the smarter compromise by not going absurdly thin. For one, you can already see here, that camera bump is atrocious. This is going to be the least balanced product if you're going to put it on the table, right, with the back. It's also going to make this part more susceptible to like all kinds of breakage. Not saying this device overall will be not durable, but like, come on. So really, did Samsung really have to try to match like the rumored Apple thinness? Like, even if they didn't do it this generation, try doing it next year. Try doing it when you actually have access to like silicon carbon batteries. So you guys can see I'm already mentioning certain shortcomings of the product because they're just very hard to ignore.
No telephoto here. And then it has the screen from the S25 Plus. So it's a 6.7 inch, 120 hertz, 1440.
Yeah, it's 1440p, so it has gotten the upgrade similar to recent Plus models to QHD Plus rather than Full HD Plus.
40p AMOLED display. And then the whole thing is powered by the Snapdragon 8
It does unfortunately not have the anti-reflective coating of the Galaxy S25 Ultra, which would have actually gone a long way to potentially help with battery life by requiring less of you to like just pump the display to high brightness levels. It's one of the best features of the Ultra, and it's missing here.
It's like the rest of the lineup. And
also, it should be noted the iPhone is a 6.5 to 6.6 inch device. This is obviously a 6.7 inch device, so there is not a thicker product than the upcoming iPhone 17 Air, but it's also a product that is at least minimally larger. I'm not sure about the bezel situation on the iPhone Air, but I suspect this will have overall more volume than the iPhone Air.
With all that power and the custom NPU and all the software features that we expect all the rest of Samsung's phones to have.
This will gonna make for some very interesting, like sustained performance testing. I think it might even be more interesting than the battery tests because Samsung did not advertise like some super new revolutionary cooling tech inside. You also can see that there are some of the infamous compromises at this point, right? It's one power button and then the combined volume up and down button. The iPhone Air at that point will also have to incorporate the action button and camera control, right? I know that not everyone loves camera control, but when it comes to internal space, the iPhone is really gonna suffer for stuff like battery because it won't compromise on the creature comforts of the iPhone lineup, including features like MagSafe, for example. And even wireless charging on iPhones through MagSafe is actually now faster than the charging you get on the Galaxy lineup, which are limited to 15 watts of wireless charging, while the iPhones give you up to 25 watts. And this one also maxes out at 25 watts of wired charging, which is really abysmal by the high-end Android like category standards. So it's really a product that looks interesting, and if you want to compare it just to the iPhone Air, which by the way might come at $200 less, if rumors are to be correct, that it just basically replaces the iPhone Plus. I just don't know who this product is for, man. Like, yeah, you will have to deal with thicker and larger devices, but imagine getting a product with largely this form factor, right? The 6.7-inch display, and you get like 25 grams heavier, 30 grams heavier. It's 1.5 millimeters thicker, maybe 2, right? But you get like 6,000 milliampere hours, right? You like talking about like the Oppo Find X8s and the Vivo X200s, the Pros, the Ultras, all the variants there that give you so much choice. Why would you pay more money for so much less?
It feels, when you're using it, very familiar software-wise, which is great. But when you make a phone this thin, 5.8 millimeters thin to be exact, well,
this is actually going to be like very interesting as a comparison, because that's about the thickness of the iPhones right now. Thinking about the next gen, where the iPhones are supposedly getting even thicker, the comparison between the next Pro iPhone and the iPhone Air, given that the next Pro iPhone is going to be thicker than this, and the iPhone Air is going to be thinner than this is going to look pretty impressive. But I don't know, like in some ways the iPhone Air really might be dead on arrival for like 95% of the iPhone user base. We'll get through some of the details, and I will try to contextualize it with everything we have known thus far. But I'm really, really not seeing the success of these thin these thin phones. Sorry, it's always when you always try to say phones and iPhones in the same sentence, it all gets a little much.
Of course, there are some obvious trade-offs you have to make. Samsung's not immune to physics, so there's no way around it. There's just less room inside the phone, so that means less room for internals like a telephoto camera, which is missing, and there's also less room for battery. So we're back down to
it's not just the telephoto. I've also mentioned that the main camera is supposedly a little bit worse. There's also the ultra wide, which is generationally worse. I mean, you can argue how big the generational difference was between like the 12 megapixel ultra wides and the 50 megapixel ultra wides, but it's still a definitively older tech here.
3,900 milliamp hour battery.
So main difference here, obviously, that's 1,000 milliampere hours less than the Galaxy S25 Plus. Which roughly matches the Ultra anyway, because the Ultra does still have to deal with the stylus inside. In fact, I'm pretty sure Samsung could easily give the Galaxy S25 Plus like a larger battery than the Ultra by just making it a tiny bit thicker, but it just would be hard to advertise that.
With 25-watt charging. 3,900 in an Android phone back in the day used to be a lot, but now,
yeah, back in the day, it's like
powerful
6-7
as these phones have gotten,
years ago,
and with as bright as these screens have gotten, and as big as they are, this is like bordering on worryingly small. Just for context, the S25 Plus, which is the same size, is...
And the Snapdragon 8 Elite, for all its efficiency, because it's a 3-nanometer chip, it's the newest chip design from Qualcomm, well, soon not, but okay. It is not that efficient, right? Like, especially when it comes to any form of high power usage. And the Galaxy S20, the Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy, what a stupid name, by the way. Like, that one is advertised as like being higher clocked and shit like that. It's like, nah. If you're going to do this in this device, it's going to overheat and it's going to have abysmal battery life. We know that because the Galaxy S25, the base model, the small version, which is way thicker than this one, struggles with sustained thermal performance on its 8 Elite, and it actually has a larger battery at 4,000 milliampere hours for a way smaller screen. So yeah, this is really gonna be hard to manage with the large screen and the 8 Elite simultaneously.
4,900 milliamp hours. And that's not to mention all the other stuff I gotta test when I get it. Things like cooling. Like I just don't expect this to have the same level of heat sink and cooling.
I'll probably not be looking into Marquez stuff for stuff like cooling. He really isn't the greatest reviewer for like nerdy details like that, but yeah, gonna be interesting. Like I would love to see Geeker Van test this.
Phones. But also, now that I've held it, as much as I hate to admit it, there is also kind of some upside to this ultra thin design too. Hear me out. So the phone obviously looks incredible. I mean, this is a sleek and modern design. It's impressive. I also think the camera sort of has this floating island design. It's actually my favorite design in the entire S25 lineup. So with no case on it, this phone looks really good. And also underrated, it's much lighter than most flagship phones.
Seem better. Yeah, that's also true. Like from everything that we've heard thus far about the iPhone 17 lineup and stuff like that, it does suggest that Apple really is making the Air as kind of like a statement that they can. And they can afford to, because the iPhone Plus models have never sold more than like 7 to 10% of the entire lineup. And even then, it's very easy to think that, oh, once it disappears, those people will just buy the Pros. Plus, they now have the iPhone E to also sell to people. So the iPhone Air and this, to be honest as well, could flop, but then the Pros would just look immensely better in comparison. And if you are somebody who has always been like, oh, I'm just an iPhone buyer, right? Then your choice between like, oh, the base model is cool, but it's a little bit too small at this point. So man, the Pro Max is really gonna stand out as an absolute battery monster. Now there is a chance, of course, that the Air, with its introduction of potentially denser battery technologies, will be less disappointing than I'm making it out to be right now. But for the true enthusiast, I just think that the functionality of better cameras, larger batteries, better cooling, and then all the creature comforts of the Pro series, right? Don't forget, faster, better USB-C, and all things like that. It's really gonna trump the Air model here.
Is 163 grams, it's basically the same as the small base.
And it's actually, if we are gonna go to a rumor later on talking about the supposed weight of the iPhone 17 Air, that would actually make it way heavier than the rumored iPhone 17 Air. So we are gonna get to a lot of interesting stuff.
25. And so just holding a phone this big in the hand that's that light, there's something about it. It's much more convincing holding it than watching a video. If you can get into a store and hold it, you'll see. But it's one of those things that I can't quite translate through the screen. I definitely felt a certain way watching a bunch of videos of this phone, but now that I've held it, I was swayed a little bit, not gonna lie. Now, I also like that the sides are flat. And then even though the whole point is to be super razor thin, they did keep some of those small things.
This is like... The speakers are gonna be stereo here, from what I understand, which is gonna be a big advantage over the iPhone 17 Air. And one thing that I actually haven't noticed thus far is it does have the design downside that is also rumored to come to the iPhone 17 Air, which is that the USB-C port is not entirely centered on the frame here in terms of the Z-axis. Now, I'm not sure if that's the case, but that's what it looks like to me.
That I think they could have gotten rid of, like the physical SIM card tray is still here.
Yeah, it's not centered. Okay, thank God. The speakers look about the same size. Doesn't mean anything because you can make the cutout any size you want. But you also have to think about it, man. If it weren't for the stylus, the amount of extra tech that Samsung could put into the S25 Ultra, given how relatively thick it is, it's kind of impressive that they are sticking with it over like advertising, I don't know, like a 6,000 milliamp hour battery, way larger main sensor, or even potentially reducing the price point by $100 or so.
Here, I think the buttons on the phone are actually slightly smaller just because of how thin it is. But then also the 25-watt charging speed is the same speed as the regular S25s, and they kept...
Yeah, which is really not great by Android standards.
15-watt.
I mean, the iPhone gives you 27
as well. On the front, it's actually the same Gorilla Glass ceramic 2 as the Ultra phone. But
yeah. So, by the way, I believe I said it debuts the new glass technology, by which I mean it's pretty much on the newest level.
Without that fancy anti-reflective coating on the Ultra. Some people like me who have used the Ultra will miss that, but a lot of people won't actually notice. And then inside, it's 12 gigs of RAM and either 256 or 512 gigs of storage.
So we have, of course, heard rumors that the iPhone Air will have potentially 12 gigs of RAM. So initially the rumors were saying that the base iPhone 17 and the Air will get 8 gigs of RAM, and then we'll get 12 on the Pro models, which, by the way, will be hilarious to finally have a generation of Galaxies matching the RAM capacity on iPhones, which is so weird. We used to be in a state where like we sometimes had 4 times more memory on Galaxy devices, and now it's apparently great to just match the iPhone. So that's a little bit weird to hear. But interestingly here is you will not want to really multitask on that device. Now you will want the extra memory just for certain larger tasks. But man, imagine just firing up all those 8 cores. It's just not gonna go too well for the battery, for the cooling of the device.
And the starting price, $1099.
Terrible.
So again, right in
the fact that they didn't even target like a psychological price point of $999. Like I know they're trying to position it like inside the lineup, so directly in between those 2 different models and everything. But like the people who are interested in the S25 Plus and see its benefits, the extra telephoto camera, the larger battery, they will not be swayed to the S25 Edge, especially not at the price.
Between the Plus.
At the higher price, that's insane.
And the Ultra. So some thoughts. Okay, first of all, and a lot of you have already typed this out in the comments, and I can see them below the video already with my psychic powers, but people aren't asking for thinner phones. Like, we know this already. Matter of fact, most people are asking.
The problem is people are asking for thinner phones, or at least lighter phones, volumetrically smaller phones. But are we asking for phones that are sub 6 millimeter thickness? That is my point. If Apple were to say, look, we made an iPhone, it's 6.5 millimeters thin, right? It's great. It still has all the creature comforts, including stereo speakers and stuff like that, dual cameras at the very least on the iPhone or in the Galaxy Triple with like one terrible telephoto camera, right? That would be fine to me, but like 5.8 is just so ridiculously thin, and then the iPhone is going even below that with 5.56. It makes the camera island look more ridiculous. It makes the product just like in the case of this device, Samsung could have made it cheaper, for example, by going with aluminum. They would have also made it potentially lighter, or they could have kept the same weight, even if they still had made it thicker with a larger battery. But because they went so thin and so potentially fragile, they had to go with like heavier glass and heavier metals so that it still is durable, which defeats the entire point.
For a slightly thicker phone to get more battery life, and this is the opposite. So I expect this phone to have worse battery life than all of the rest of the S25s.
Yep.
I'm not sure how much worse yet. I got to test it, so get subscribed to see the full review when it comes out, but I can pretty much guarantee it will be worse. Second of all, though, there's also rumors of an iPhone 17 Air, an ultra-thin iPhone coming out at the end of the year.
I'm so glad that the Air branding stuck, because I remember when it was called Slim, and it still might get called Slim, but from the very moment that the rumor launched, I was like, wait, why are we not calling this iPhone Air when we already have Pro models in the lineup? Like, that just makes all the sense in the world. So I'm glad that just for the simplicity of the rumor mill, we have the iPhone Air situation. Now, we could still be wrong. We were wrong with the iPhone SE, right? That turned out to be the iPhone 16e. But yeah, let's see.
Here as well. I wasn't sure how they would position that phone, but I'm now a little more confident they'll probably also do a sort of middle of the lineup thing. But, you know, Samsung's is out.
Yeah, but Apple will not have a Plus model anymore. So my expectation is probably $999, but with 256 gigabytes of storage. So assuming that Apple probably doesn't want to make too many different configurations of this device, I assume they're just gonna skip the $899 price point of the Plus. It will cost basically the same as a 256 gigabyte Plus model, and yeah, it's gonna be like $799 for the base model. I assume it will still start with 128 gigabytes. It really doesn't make sense to increase prices or lower prices. The base model sells really well, but the higher price point might prevent that, and the lower price point will eat into margins. And then the Air. Now, again, all of this is also rumoring with thinking that the tariffs will either be reduced to like 10% at most for China, or potentially gotten rid of, which would be a complete and total defeat of Trump's policies. But yeah, so that's what I assume. If the tariffs stay at 30% and potentially are also like hiked up on India or something like that, then it's really like it's everybody's like guess at that point. And including the world pricing, because there is a chance that instead of increasing prices by 30% in the US, Apple might increase prices in worldwide by 10 or 15%, right? Because the US is such an important market for Apple.
First, so they can say that they did it before Apple, and that means a lot to Samsung. I think both phones will have some battery issues to deal with, but Samsung did actually keep an ultra-wide camera and a physical SIM card tray.
Okay, so I'm happy that Apple is getting rid of superfluous stuff in 2025, like a SIM card tray. I know some of you love it, and I'm glad that there are still models that serve your needs. But to me, I think all iPhones should get rid of the physical SIM card tray, use that internal space for something else, use the reduced complexity in the device to make it more durable, to increase water and dust protection here. Yeah, so to me, that's an absolute no-brainer.
And the same exact chip as their highest-end flagship phone, which it looks like the iPhone will not do any of those things.
Yeah.
Then the other thing is, we all know the stats. Almost everyone puts a case on their phone. So instant reaction is just like, oh, why would I get a thinner phone like this when I'm just going to put a case on it?
Well, I will actually disagree with that point because, and don't know what Marquez will have to say about this, but I actually think the fact that you are using your phone with a case does kind of make it better if the phone is thinner, right? Because that will make the phone with the case probably about as thick as like your regular like Galaxy S25 Plus at that point, but you would still have to put a case on your Galaxy S25 Plus, and at that point you would have a far less comfortable product. While this one, even with a thick case, much less something very elegant like a Pitaka case, right, like a carbon fiber, aramid fiber case, I do think that these devices look good with cases, with accessories, like a potential battery, like case, I guess. It's not technically a case what Apple did, like the MagSafe strap-on batteries. But I don't think it's bad that they still need accessories. Like my Pro iPhone still needs a case. It's not something I can get around.
And it's just
really like, I guess I could, but I don't want to.
Feeling like any other regular phone. But I do actually think that with how crazy thin and
well, no, it will still look thinner than the other phones in cases.
light they've made it. This is one of those phones that you put a thin case on it, or maybe even a D-brand skin or something like that, but it's still actually gonna feel thinner and lighter than a normal phone with a case
that's
on
smart.
it. So if you're one of those rare people who is actually looking for specifically a thinner phone or a lighter phone, but not necessarily a smaller screen, then okay, yeah, this is theoretically for you. Matter of fact, before I review this phone,
that kind of also puts us in the contention, though, with the flip category. Now, if you're somebody like me and you really dislike the crease, that's one thing. And, of course, the potential durability issues. But, man, at this point, you do get, like, more battery, actually, in a flip Galaxy. And those Galaxies have not been, like, Samsung's biggest focus by any means. Plus, you get all the fun stuff of the foldable market, right? Like the different kind of way to take selfies and the potential like reduction of smartphone addiction if you mainly use this small outer screen. And that can also help you save battery. Instead of always taking it out, looking at the full 6.7-inch screen, you're instead just working with the small, like 4-inch outer screen.
This is the exact customer who I think it seems like it's aimed at. This is someone who is going to upgrade to a Samsung phone somewhere in the lineup and liked the idea of going all the way up to the Ultra because the camera looked really nice. But they don't want to carry this big, thick Ultra phone with an S Pen they'll never use. So
yeah, I just don't think that that's a very big market. They also
like the idea of the Ultra camera, but don't mind having a worse ultra wide.
I'm surprised by the relative success of the Galaxy S Plus. Right, I always thought that it was way too close to the Ultra. It will basically take you waiting 3 months until you can get an Ultra for roughly the MSRP of the Plus. But the Plus also goes on sale, so you can quickly get it for $800 rather than $1,000. And more importantly, people really seem to like its focus, that it's a little bit thinner, lighter, just less of a brick. And yeah, that was fascinating to me. Like my father-in-law, my stepfather, Jesus Christ, has a Plus model. One of my best friends has a Plus model. I've read in forums that many people like the Plus for that reason. So it's not surprising, even though, by the way, we know that statistically the Ultra sells way better than the Plus and the base model combined. But I do understand why both Apple and Samsung are trying to play around somewhere like that $900 to $1,100 price point, that 6.6 to 6.8 inch form factor, but it's not necessarily the thickest or heaviest. I understand why they're trying to reach the people there. I'm just not sure if they're doing it the right way. That's all I'm going to say for now.
No telephoto and less battery. Or just someone who sees a cool...
Yeah, and of course, we have not talked about all the stuff that we are also going to see made worse on the iPhone Air. Like the iPhone Air is supposedly only having a mono speaker setup. This one has stereo speakers, but we don't know if, for example, if maybe the bottom speaker is actually trash. We just cannot tell you. What about compromises to microphones, to haptics inside the product? It's really hard to predict because it will really depend on what Samsung focuses on. Some of those stuff, I guarantee you, will be bad, and some might be surprisingly good if Samsung internally really cared for, let's say, haptics over speakers, but I just don't know yet.
Commercial thinks it looks shiny and thin and just buys it anyway. But anyway, stay tuned for the full review.
So that was the Galaxy S25 Edge, a rough overview over it. That's not to say that that's all we have to say about the thin and light phones today. So again, I did point out that I'm going to cover a rumor from a leaker I'm not the biggest fan of, Ukes1122, though we have talked about some stuff by this leaker in the past. And this leaker reveals two things about the supposed iPhone 17 Air. One is a weight of approximately 145 grams. That's, of course, undercutting the over 160 grams that we just saw being mentioned about the Galaxy S25 Edge. However, one thing where it will noticeably be worse is a supposed battery capacity of 2,800 milliampere hours. Now, this does line up with supposed Apple internal tests that find that only around 60 to 70% of iPhone users will be able to get a full day of battery life out of that phone. That number is around 80 to 90% for, well, most of the rest of the lineup. I assume the Pro Max and the Plus are probably closer to 90%, and then the smaller Pro and the base iPhone model are probably closer to that 80% range. Obviously, that capacity brings up to around the capacities of the iPhone 12 and 12 Pro, so several generations old and smaller form factor devices. that is not too good. And in comparison to the current base iPhone model, so of course not the Plus, that's a noticeable reduction of like 20% or more. And then with the 16 Plus, it's just a monumental reduction of almost 2000 milliampere hours. This is almost 4700 going down to 2800. Now, obviously, Apple is trying to reach like small iPhone levels of weight here, right? We're looking at weight comparable to like an iPhone 13 mini. Whether that's worth it for you will remain to be seen. Now, obviously, we cannot predict the exact battery life based on the capacity. So, judging by reports, and we are going to look at more Mark Gurman stuff later on, iOS 19 will have some AI features to improve battery life, right? He's saying it's part of the Apple Intelligence platform. It should be noted that optimizing a device for battery, for one, companies have been saying it's AI based for years and years. And I would also argue that Apple probably actually has the control of hardware, software, and the entire platform to actually get some good results out of it. I know Apple Intelligence doesn't have the best PR right now for all the delays and stuff like that. But don't forget that it's very different to make a chatbot than to make a feature in the processor, which this is going to be a processor feature, that and a software feature, but you know what I mean, that is optimizing battery. Now, this does not seem to be exclusive to the iPhone Air, and it's probably going to be advertised as just going to be compatible with all Apple Intelligence iPhones. So that would be iPhone 15 Pro and up. How good it actually is, we'll have to see. It also might be the case that iOS 19, with its new animations and everything like that, new features, might be more demanding. So this will kind of even it out. But right now, we really don't know. The company is using battery data it has collected from users' devices to understand trends and make predictions for when it should lower the power draw of certain applications or features. It should be noted that something like this already exists, but obviously, if Apple believes that they now have a much better model to run this, that could be cool. There will also be a lock screen indicator showing how long it will take to charge up the device, which again, this is something that, for example, exists on MacBooks, but not on iPhone. So maybe Apple just has more battery data to work with, whether they're analyzing it through AI or through traditional algorithms. I don't think really should matter to the average consumer. But yeah, if we are going to end up with a really low capacity iPhone 17 Air, that might help mitigate some stuff. Speaking of the low capacity iPhone 17 Air, we have, of course, had rumors now for about 2 weeks that because of the worse battery life, Apple is actually going to launch a new battery. Now, again, they call it case, but I would assume we are talking about an accessory similar to the MagSafe battery pack. But yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, the actual MagSafe battery pack did have a similar capacity to the battery that is rumored to be getting into the iPhone Air. So maybe that will help it somewhat, but I'm really not sure, unfortunately. Again, this is coming from the information, which is up and down with its reliability. I would be surprised if Apple doesn't make a new MagSafe battery pack at some point. I would hope that if they do, they actually use newer battery technology, like silicon carbon, because that will be, in my opinion, crucial to making this a very attractive accessory, right? Make it either really thin and really sleek looking, and also, of course, that silicon carbon is supposedly better at cooling the battery, and or make it just as big as it was before, but with a lot more battery inside. So obviously, I couldn't give you those details. but it's going to be interesting. Plus, if Apple really wants to charge $100 or more, they better give it better battery tech, because you can easily get like battery packs with like 5,000 milliampere hours or more. Granted, they are pretty thick and not very handy, but they are like 50 to 60 bucks at most. Even with the Apple Premium and the fact that it's a first party accessory, the fact that you would get an accessory with way lower capacity that costs way more is probably the reason why the MagSafe battery pack did not succeed as much before. So, yeah. And of course, it is going to have probably a pretty small market, because if the iPhone Pros are getting larger batteries and then subsequent iPhone models are getting silicon carbon throughout the entire generations, it's really going to be hard to upsell people on $100 or even a more expensive battery pack if it's not similarly high capacity. And speaking of high capacity, this is actually going counter to the reports we just went through, which is that the iPhone 17 Air might actually be capable of adopting newer battery technology like silicon carbon. This is according to, again, not the greatest source, Digitimes, but it's coming from TDK CEO Noboru Saito, who revealed in a recent interview that the Apple supplier has accelerated its production timeline, moving shipments forward from the originally planned September quarter. That may give smartphone makers enough time to use the cells in thinner models launching this year, he suggested. So, on a very basic level, silicon carbon right now is very limited in terms of what suppliers actually offer this technology. This is a supplier that is very close to Apple, supplying a lot of its other batteries. So, and they were kind of rumored to have this tech ready for phones coming out next year, at least like the true mass market phones. Obviously, phones like the Vivo, the Oppo, they can already do that. But now they kind of pushed it up a lot faster. And whether that means it's ready for the iPhone 17 Air, or maybe they're working with Samsung on the S25 Edge, it's hard to tell, but it could be. And Mark Gurman has said in the past that battery life would be on par with current iPhones, which to me still suggests that it would have a lower capacity than the Plus model, for example. Because think about it, it has technology specifically designed to reduce strain on the battery, right? It will have the C1 modem rather than the more power-hungry older Qualcomm modems that Apple uses. It will have an LTPO screen rather than an LTPS standard non-variable refresh rate panel on the current Plus. There are probably other trade-offs. So I would expect it to probably have somewhere between the actual rumored 2800 and the 3900 we just saw on the S25 Edge. Maybe it would be around. My personal prediction for a while has been that Apple might match the capacity of the base iPhone model in the larger model, right? The ways to do it is, for one, you have one fewer camera, you have a larger footprint of a product, and you have a denser battery technology, and you remove other features like a SIM card tray and a potential stereo speaker system. So even with a product being much thinner, that still gives you some room to give you roughly this kind of capacity. And the reason we know it's possible, even without silicon carbon technology, is we just saw the Galaxy S25 Edge doing that. So, gonna be interesting to see how exactly it plays out. Now, that's finally it for the iPhone 17 Air, actually, because I do believe it's an interesting product. But at this point, I'm really not as interested in like individual spec points and more in the overall experience that Apple is going to target with it. Not to downplay that it might be bad in certain ways. I have certainly speculated on certain missing features being like kind of a dead on arrival sentence for me. but I think that for what it is, I really am now waiting for the final product, right? With Samsung, it's a little bit more predictable at this point because we have pretty much the same components in other devices, just with larger batteries. So we can pretty easily estimate the battery penalty we're getting. Don't forget, the iPhone 17 Air is getting the A19 chip, which is going to be N3P rather than N3E. It is going to have the C1 modem. So, and again, we don't yet fully know the battery technology it's going to have. So, unless we get like real estimates, like Min-Chi Kuo or Mark Gurman come out and say like the A19 chip is exactly 10% more efficient, I'll refrain with further judgments right now. Riley saying this is the opposite I want in a device. Well, thankfully you won't really be forced to get it. I know that some people, including some viewers of this channel, have said that they've always wanted a plus model because they don't care about like having 3 cameras and LiDAR and everything, but they care about LTPO, right? They care about high refresh rate. They care about ProMotion. So they wanted the plus to get LTPO, get ProMotion, but basically stay the plus in every other way, right? $900 price point, 2 cameras rather than 3, good battery life, or even like a good battery capacity. Apple clearly did not want to do that because I don't know if they just thought there wouldn't be a market for it, or it might potentially cannibalize Pro Max sales. But yeah, I agree. It's not really something that I would want for myself, especially if it's truly targeting like 145 grams of weight. I'm like, really? You weren't gonna make new minis, but you are gonna make a plus size device with 145 grams. At what point do you even feel the difference between like 145 and 155, right? Yeah, I care about the chipset running well and battery life. Rest are meaningless. Yeah, this is why a potential plus model with a better screen could have actually been like very tempting for people who traditionally buy like Pro Max models, because they're like, man, I don't need an even better camera, right? I don't necessarily need the absolute most amount of memory or whatever. I'm fine with having an A19 rather than an A19 Pro. So maybe that's why Apple didn't want to, but yeah, it's hard to tell. So I promised you we would get more Mark Gurman stuff here in the video, but I actually want to react to another MKBHD video before we get back to Apple. So this is actually one of those videos that actually has plenty of non-Apple topics, and we are actually going to look into the Sony WH-1000XM6. What a terrible name. But yeah, those are Sony's latest and greatest headphones, and I'm actually gonna speed up the video a little bit more because the main point here is to give you some broad comparisons to AirPods Max. Not that it's based on personal experience. I still haven't made myself purchase AirPods Max, but it is going to be interesting because AirPods Max at this point have not been updated for years and years. Sony's updating the WH-1000 every year. So Apple is really falling behind here, not because their expertise is worse, but simply because others are doing more. Did you test the iPad Mini? I tried iPad Mini. Now I'm not specifically like the latest model, like the which chip has it? I believe it has the A17 Pro, right? But I like the iPad Mini overall. I do have a problem with some of its decisions. It's not that I want it to be that much better for the same amount of money. I think $500 is okay. But at some point, I would even like it to be actually more. And I've said this time and time again, unfortunately. I kind of wish it was a little bit more expensive, maybe just $600, but like improved on certain features. in a dramatic way, right? For the $100, you easily go from the 60 hertz screen to 500 nits, I believe, to at least like a 600 nits ProMotion screen, right? Even if you don't want to go OLED, which I still think you could with the money, it is a little bit weird. That being said, if you can get it at a discount, I actually think the iPad mini is fantastic. So it's a little bit in this no man's land with its MSRP. But once it's like price reduced by 15% or so, I actually think it becomes a great product. So I have a little bit of this weird opinion on the iPad mini.
Okay, so Sony is back with their new flagship wireless noise canceling headphones with this super easy to remember.
It's $475. What you're buying? Are you buying the MSRP? Are you buying the base model?
Name. You know the ones. These are the Sony WH-1000XM6s. Easier way to think of it, most people just call these the XM6 or the Mark 6s, which is exciting because the Mark 5s from last year actually left some room for improvement. They improved some things, but they also made some things.
I have to say though, this is really not my favorite design of the WH-1000s. I mean, I understand why they did certain things, but I will point out some shortcomings here. And we will see why Apple does AirPods Max the way they do them, because they do have some other priorities. Right, I hope you enjoy it. The base model here is actually great now that it has 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigabytes of storage. It's really, to me, just the screen that makes me a little bit iffy on it. Also, $475, is that with taxes? Because that would suggest it's a little cheaper before that. I also didn't ask you where you're from. I just assumed you're from the US.
It was weird because the Sony noise canceling
Obviously, if you're talking Australian dollars, that's a deal. If you're talking Canadian dollars, that's a pretty good deal too. If you're talking US dollars, it's a deal.
Were pretty much king of the hill for so long. They didn't have a ton of reason to change a whole lot. Thankfully, though, the newest generation.
So this is the one thing that I really dislike here, and we're gonna see that in more detail throughout the video. Like, why is there this like not fully aligned little plastic part sticking out?
It's a lot of stuff.
I understand it's probably where part of the like the extender basically sits too, so they just literally needed that physical space. Okay, Riley, there are no taxes on electronics where you live. Well, that's good too for you. We have 19% value-added tax here in Germany. Yeah, I asked. I know the US has like very non-standard taxation on those issues. Like most states don't even go far beyond like 6-7%, and yeah, some don't have any. Well, congrats.
The Mark 5s fell short on, so that's really good to see. It's exciting that there is a new design, new sound, a new case, but also a new price. We'll get there. So straight from the top, I still love this super clean.
So he's still wearing the Ultra, by the way. So I always find it funny when people are like, oh, like I am a man of all ecosystems. And I know he like rocks the Google Pixel and occasionally the latest Samsung devices. But it's just always funny that in terms of like earbuds, it's basically always AirPods Pros, right? Big headphones, they do vary. It's not always AirPods Max, that's true. But when it comes to the Apple Watch, I like cannot think of a major tech reviewer who like seriously wears all the time like a Galaxy Watch or something that. Thank you. I can justify the price of an iPad Pro, so this will do. Well, yeah, I fully understand that. This is why I honestly think that Apple should bring it to some feature parity to the Pros, and it doesn't even have to be the current Pros. It doesn't have to have like a tandem OLED Ultra screen, but the 2018 iPad Pros, right, had ProMotion screens and were significantly cheaper, for example, than the 13-inch iPad Airs right now. So I just think that Apple could give the iPad more. I think the reason they aren't is because they gave us other things like more storage and more RAM, which is something they historically used to cheap out on. And so they really are trying to save on other stuff. But yeah, it's not that the mini is a bad product, and as long as it's even like what you are getting, like a 5% discount, it's already better in my opinion. I wish it was like 450 by default, and then maybe 425 for people who are getting a small discount. But obviously, it's a $50 difference from what you're getting, right? I understand it's not going to make the biggest difference to most people. Most people are just going to say, oh, you know what? I can eat those $50.
Simple design. They kept what was good about the Mark V's. They are very, very lightweight.
So that's one difference to the AirPods Max, which are notoriously heavy, but also, of course, they feel much more premium. But then again, these are headphones, so they should have different design priorities than like your iPhone, for example. I mean, Apple knows that. They don't make the AirPods Pro case out of metal.
The vegan leather ear pads are super soft.
They do get warm and make me sweaty, though. Apple's material, that soft fabric on the AirPods Max, is just really, really great. And I'm not saying it's the best, because I haven't tested like the latest Bose and whatever. But man, I'm not the biggest fan of these vegan leather products.
The headband is incredibly flexible.
That I like, but then again, this also makes me really uncomfortable seeing that. But then again, those are headphones with a different priority list than AirPods Max.
They're just some of the most comfortable headphones to wear for a long period of time, which is what you want from these. If you wear them for a long time for traveling or for a commute or something like that, they are still awesome. But if you remember the last generation, maybe you're a subscriber and you've watched all these videos, wink, wink, then you remember that they made this
I
huge
think he's now
downgrade
at
to
20
travel
million.
specifically
I think he
because they
posted
didn't
that on
fold
Threads
at all,
recently.
ever. So they had this huge case that was more.
So that's the downside of the
first thing I was
AirPods
happy to
Max
see is the
2,
Mark
similar
6s
to the
are back
last
to being
generation of the Sony WH-1000. They don't fold. These one fold again, like the XM4s did before them.
Able to fold up again. So they have a new, significantly smaller case designed around them that fits some cables as well. And bonus, the case doesn't zipper anymore. It just closes with magnets at this buckle on the side, and it is way faster to open and close than everyone else's zipper cases.
Also,
I'm actually not sure.
A nice difference versus Apple's case, which does have magnets, but it's this infamous bra case, as people call it. So yeah, they really do know their audience, Sony. And I feel like Apple would know that audience too by now if they just allowed it to happen, right? If they kept on refreshing the AirPods Max instead of sticking with that original design and basically that original model, except for like switching Lightning for USB-C.
Sure, how we haven't seen this more often, because this case is pretty much perfect. I have a feeling it's about to be copied a whole lot in a whole bunch of places, because wouldn't change a thing. Also, another thing the Mark V's weirdly didn't do was when you're wearing them around your neck was just to be able to rotate them flat.
Yep, like, that is very important because otherwise they press against your fucking carotid artery.
Yes. For some reason, they took that away in the Mark V's, and now they're back. Simple thing, but thank you. So overall, design-wise, I feel like...
So you see how this part is sticking out? But then again, it wouldn't have really that much of the extender portion, so I wonder why that is.
They're back to being up near.
But you also see, by the way, it's not as tight fit, like in all like design aspects, as the AirPods Max. Like you don't see that kind of hole on the AirPods Max. It should be noted that this is, in this case, it's really not a sign of like cheap design. It's really a sign of like a very different focus on like small form factor, lightweight, bendy, easy to fold, right? Those are compromises, sure, but I actually think that they are worth it here.
Top of the best.
But yeah,
travel
they're not nearly as nice to look at as AirPods Max.
Ready noise canceling headphones. It also comes with a 4-foot right angle headphone cable and one of those tiny USB.
Don't care about USB-A to USB-C charging.
To USB-A cables for charging. And they just fit in this little pocket over here in the corner of the case like this. It's great, feels durable, no notes. And then they changed the buttons and microphones around the outside of the headphones just slightly, so the right side is still just the USB Type-C port. And then on the left, next to the audio jack, they've made the power button much bigger, which doesn't seem like much of a big deal, but that now lets you distinguish better between the power button and the noise cancellation button while you're not able to see them.
Yeah, of course, the AirPods Max actually is one of the few Apple products that has a decent selection of buttons, two, but it's it doesn't power off the product, unfortunately. Wait, how many? Uh, is it? It doesn't just have just a digital crown, right? It has a button for. It has a button for transparency mode and stuff like that, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. So two buttons. In that case, it's actually very similar to the Vision Pro. Let's return.
Speaking of noise cancellation, they made a bunch of behind the scenes changes to these headphones that sound like they could make a big improvement. So there are 12 microphones on these instead of 8 from the last generation. There's also a significantly more powerful Sony QN3 chip inside that should be able to do much more processing. And they also said that they've trained these headphones on 500 million voice samples using AI to be able to better distinguish human voices from environmental noise. So this is the last generation of headphones and how the built-in microphone sounds. So when I'm on a call with 8 microphones, some noise from air conditioners and general room tones, but nothing too crazy. And so now here is the Mark 6.
Sounds actually better.
So they added 2 more beamforming microphones to the front for hearing my voice better. But what I really think most of these microphones are better for is noise cancellation and transparency. So how do they sound? Well, I've been listening to these headphones for the past 2 weeks or so. I've taken a few flights. I've worn them around the studio, at home, all kinds of different environments, and they sound better. These are actually all new drivers versus the last gen, so there's a lot going on here.
So there's actually that much that I can say here, so I'm not actually going to pause it.
Punchy lows and a lot of bass,
you
and
can
then a lot
see
of detail
that
and clarity
it's a very
all the way through
good
the mids and the
product
highs.
that sounds
and
good,
they are still
has
really,
improved
really
over the
insanely
years,
good at
has
canceling out
listened to
white noise.
the
Now, if we want to get even more
base.
granular, I did a bunch of back-to-back listening with these Mark 6s and the last generation, and there are certain tracks where you really feel the difference a lot. Basically, the Mark 6s have a much stronger low end, especially in the sub bass and lowest bass. And the Mark 5s started to feel a little spiky in the mid-range where the vocals are, and we're a little bit weaker in the low end.
I cannot provide that kind of feedback, obviously. Don't know if it's correct or not,
pop,
but
electro, hip-hop, stuff like that.
I think over the years, Marquez has been known to give pretty good reviews for headphones. That's why I'm reacting to him.
That's when, in these, they're really appreciated. And then the Mark 6 also has even stronger noise cancellation than the already goated Mark 5s. But the real highlight for me is actually the transparency mode, which feels way more natural and clear sounding. So if you're wearing
that is actually one of the things that I really wanted to mention here, which is that this is one benefit that Apple has had over the years. Not even probably that much because their audio expertise is that unmatched, but because of their historic willingness to put very advanced processors into headphones. So their noise cancellation was always good, but then again, noise cancellation also depends on multitude of other factors. But transparency mode, which is pretty much just like your processor and your microphones, that stuff is slowly getting matched by other people because Apple refuses to update at least the AirPods Max. I know it's still class leading when it comes to small buds on the AirPods Pro 2, though we are kind of overdue for AirPods Pro 3, and AirPods 4 are pretty good in that regard. So yeah, it's when it comes to big stuff, it's really weird that Apple just hasn't put at least the H2 chip inside it. Because I would bet almost money that it's still way better than whatever, that QN5 or whatever they call it, the QN3 inside this. But yeah, they refuse to do it. Hopefully that by the time AirPods Pro 3 come out, they just naturally give the same H3 chips, which I assume will be powering the next AirPods Pros, also to the AirPods Max. Even if they don't refresh the design, they really are overdue a chip upgrade. Riley, you're saying, I'm on AirPods Pro 4A and C, and they're best so far. That's what I'm also hearing. It's similar to the Plus model thing, where the certain models just don't sell too well, but they serve very specific markets. And I hear from people who really don't like having ear tips on their earbuds. So while they like a lot of the feature sets of the AirPods Pro, and they even acknowledge that in many ways they might be better than AirPods 4, they will just they will also say, oh my God, that comfort level, similar to how we talked about a thinner, lighter product, just feels better in your hand. I fully understand why some people, rather than paying a small amount of extra money for AirPods Pro, they get AirPods 4, even like the more expensive ANC model. Sam Hines still sounds like a thin mic. Yeah, you will probably not get too much around that simply because of the directional nature. Look, I know there is a lot of AI tricks you can employ. Also, by the way, thank you, Sam, for joining. I posted on Blue Sky. I know you are on Blue Sky, right? But like, I really haven't paid too much attention to Threads or Blue Sky recently. So the community on those platforms is pretty much dead for me, unfortunately. But yeah, when it comes to microphones and products like these, they will be limited at least partially by the position. I mean, I can put the best microphone in my Shure MV7 Plus, right? But if I do this, right, you can hear me, but it's just not going to have the same success as when I put it right here. So it's just the nature of the beast. Riley, I don't like ear tips and also having my ears covered and the brace going around my head. Yeah, I don't like over-ear headphones in general. This is why, like AirPods Max, they could be twice as good and half the price, and that's when I would probably make it like a spontaneous purchase for myself. But I'm just not gonna pay 500, well, $600 in my region for a product. Well, with discounts, let's say 450. Let's even say 450. I'm just not gonna pay that money for a product I basically would never use over my AirPods Pros. And AirPods Pros, in my opinion, have actually taught me to like headphones without ear tips. But in general, this is probably still my favorite headphone design ever, right? That standard earbuds, earpods, I guess, design, that is still my favorite. I can wear that literally all day.
These headphones and do want voices to come through, or just want to hear your environment more?
I used to buy high-end Beats back in the day, both the big models and the one with ear tips. My first ones, my first wireless ones were actually power Beats, right? So the ones that went around your neck, right? And then had a pretty decent battery, because I didn't like how small, how short the battery life was on the original AirPods. And that they fell out of my ears often during workouts. That was the time when I lost like, oh my God, how much was it? 50 pounds? So I went to the gym like every day for like half a year. And it was very important for me that like my freaking headphones stick in my ears at the very least.
Or what Sony calls ambient sound mode. Went from feeling a little muddy and unclear to literally up there with AirPods Max.
But by the way, Sam Hine, that's actually something interesting that you said, because he doesn't sound like, it's still like very thin, like microphone noise, right? Or sound. So I wonder if those things actually might not be as good for transparency mode as he makes them out to be, because his voice would sound that way to him too, because they are fully closed off. So it's not like he also hears himself the way you do with AirPods, right? Even with ANC AirPods, you still have at least some bleedage of sound. Yeah, so I wonder if his statements on transparency mode are as justifiably positive as they are. Riley, I think this is the most comfort-based product category Apple just buy based on what they can tolerate. True. This is why AirPods Pro actually were a little bit of like, I had to force myself a little bit to buy them. The second generation, didn't get the first ones. But I got like the right sized ear tips and stuff like that, and it worked over time. But in theory, I would prefer something like AirPods 4 ANC. It's just that at this point, I'm used to the Pros too. So I might check out if there's like an AirPods 5 ANC if I don't buy the AirPods Pro 3 instantly, like I think I will. But because they don't come out at the same time, it's hard for me to make that purchase decision.
levels of crystal clear and natural, which is awesome. Now, not only are these headphones new, but Sony's also refreshed their app.
Okay, so this is, I don't think you guys care for the ads. These cost $450, which brings them pretty close to the MSRP of AirPods Max. Right now, I would probably recommend you get these over AirPods Max, if not even out of personal preference, but simply to send a message to Apple, like, please freaking upgrade them. And at that point, we might actually buy them. So I don't want to go too much into this because I know this is not the focus of this channel. But it is, in my opinion, an important annual launch, right? And the last gen, the XM5s, actually had some downgrades in terms of like creature comforts. These ones actually returned to the best stuff, but now they're also more expensive. But then again, you don't know, are the tariffs to blame on that? The overall market situation, the fact that these are basically the de facto premium headphones outside of like the $2,000 ones you get for like premium music production, whatever. So, and yeah, thank you, Marquez, for 2 videos here to react to. Now, we have more Apple stuff to react to analyze today, actually. Now, I'm not going to go too much into detail here. First, Apple is launching CarPlay Ultra. Now, this is basically a more premium version of CarPlay that is designed in lockstep with the manufacturer of the car. And that way it can integrate design elements that are specific to the car model, like these Aston Martin specific like speedometers and stuff like that. And even more importantly, it integrates with car controls like your cooling, heating, all that stuff. You can see with the new Aston Martins, obviously it's a very premium car. It's not even designed for techies that much. You see, it still has a lot of traditional buttons and stuff like that. The screen isn't ginormous. I actually really like that. I think that will help a lot in reducing distractions. You can go to YouTube and watch the Top Gear video on CarPlay Ultra, and a lot of YouTubers have summarized it. I don't own a car because it just makes no sense for me in Berlin to own a car. The parking situation is trash and stuff like that. So this is why, obviously, if I were to buy a car, I would want it to have CarPlay. With CarPlay Ultra, that's nice. Apple also promises new cars to support this from Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis. Unfortunately, the market is really moving in a direction where CarPlay Ultra, which is kind of the rebranding of CarPlay 2, which Apple promised us like 3 years ago. The problem with it, a lot of car manufacturers really want full control of the in-car experience. Whether you're talking newer brands and EV brands like Tesla and Rivian, or you're even talking like Mercedes, right? These companies want you to associate their cars with their software. Some of them might still give you CarPlay, like we saw that with Lucid. They still focus mostly on an in-house infotainment system, but then they allow you to put CarPlay on like one of its 3 screens. My problem is, I think this is great. It obviously would present a problem whenever you get into your car and you don't have your phone with you. But then again, your car would still be capable of everything that like you need. Plus, most of us don't really walk around without our phones. But yeah, I guess that's up to everyone to decide. I personally think this looks really slick. So it now also controls not just like extra screens, of course, like that middle one, but also the driver's side screen. I'm not sure if it can integrate with heads-up displays. but at least the instrument cluster is included. It also allows for customization, and it's very dynamic, potentially even showing you like what music is playing right now. It can put the maps directly on the driver display, all your car controls. So that's where the deep integration comes in. It's not just something that Apple overlays in the display. It's obviously something that they need data for, like, for example, your tire pressure. Drivers can also use on-screen controls, physical buttons, or Siri to manage standard vehicle functions. So if you have a car that has a lot of traditional buttons, at least for stuff like up, down, and confirm, now that has worked in the past, but I assume it will work even better with these highly optimized things. Riley's saying, haven't there been there more leaks about DubDub? It depends, right? Like, some things are official. For example, like CarPlay Ultra. I don't assume Apple will talk too much about it at DubDub, but hey, it's a new thing. And technically, this could even give us small glimpses of a new design. But I assume that CarPlay will not be redesigned right away with like the iOS 19 design language. The other thing is something that we're going to talk later about, and that is accessibility features. Now, similar to CarPlay Ultra, I don't want to go into this in like the biggest detail, because I am not the biggest user of accessibility features, because thankfully I don't have any disabilities. However, and I've said that time and time again, accessibility features are not just for people with disability. They are for everyone, and it's very important that Apple serves all those communities, whether it's vision impaired or hearing impaired people. So I'm incredibly almost proud here of Apple, but it's just not something that I can give a lot of expertise on, because don't get me wrong, I'm not a tech expert, but I interact a lot with tech. I read a lot about tech. So I feel confident in talking about tech. But when it comes to certain things, like in this case, two features actually. Something car specific, which I don't interact with daily, and accessibility features, which I don't interact with daily. I also feel confident in telling you these are interesting things happening in the world of Apple. There are software things that are happening around DubDub, but I will not be the person to give you the deepest insights on those things. Also cool things, you get like widgets, almost like your calendar entries and weather. So there's a lot of customization here happening through CarPlay Ultra. I think this would come off even clearer on a much larger screen, right? But that's a little bit of the downside of partnering first with Aston Martin. But otherwise, looks great to me. It will begin rollout in the US and Canada, and other vehicles will get it then in the next 12 months. I assume it will be more and more even after 12 months. And it works on iPhone 12 or later, running iOS 18.5 or later. So this is a feature that's technically like out. But very fascinating the way that CarPlay is evolving. I hope they also keep updating the regular CarPlay experience, learning, including from things like CarPlay Ultra. But I would love to see this on like a giant screen, right? Like those new like Mercedes all around screens. That would be really cool. And speaking of other Apple news, this is not a rumor. This is on Apple's newsroom reports. Apple is providing, they provided it a few days ago, right, on May 13th. That was Accessibility Day. This is something they've been doing traditionally for the last couple of years, which is they basically have DubDub for their mainstream software features and sometimes some accessibility features. But because their portfolio of accessibility features is now very vast, they actually use the Worldwide Accessibility Day to talk about features. So they don't clutter up the main DubDub keynote too much. I assume they will still be like panels on this during dub, but for now they have nutrition labels on the App Store, so that way you know which apps support which accessibility features. Magnifier for Mac, so that's an iPhone feature. You can see the way it's being attached, like the iPhone camera, which is fascinating because they're using an iPhone camera, an iPhone here that doesn't actually have a telephoto camera. Not that you need a telephoto camera for magnifier, but it's a little bit funny. Braille access, accessibility reader, innovative updates to Live Listen, Vision OS, and they also improve a feature that I think is personally really cool, which is personal voice, which is basically a kind of AI generated voice where you train it to sound like you. That's for people who have potentially neuro and muscular degenerative diseases where their voice eventually goes away over time. So Apple is improving that. So accessibility nutrition labels bring a new section to App Store product pages that will highlight accessibility features within apps and games. Features like voice-over, voice control, larger text, sufficient contrast, reduced motion, and on and on. So this is why, by the way, I'm a big fan of developers using the App Store. I honestly think that the focus that Apple has on security, privacy, accessibility, and providing information on all of those things is very important. So while I'm not entirely against the concept of third-party app stores, no third-party app store, and certainly not the Epic Game Store, have convinced me that I should favor them over the App Store. The all-new magnifier for Mac, which obviously has been working on iPhones and iPads for a while. They give users who are blind to have low vision tools to zoom in, read text, and detect objects around them. So this basically works with continuity camera because obviously the Mac doesn't have a camera on the back. So that helps. There's a new Braille experience, which I'm actually not sure what the current situation of Braille support is on iOS. But Braille Access, an all-new experience that turns iPhone, iPad, Mac, and Apple Vision into a full-featured Braille note-taker that's deeply integrated into the Apple ecosystem. With a built-in app launcher, users can easily open any app by typing with Braille screen input or connected Braille device. With Braille Access, users can quickly take notes in Braille format and perform calculations using Nemeth Braille, a Braille code often used in classrooms for math and science. So this is really something I cannot talk too much about. My biggest contact with Braille is the Daredevil series, but yeah, seems like some cool stuff and more and more and more. So if you are really into this stuff, please go to Apple's newsroom. Please also keep providing them feedback on the features you need and want and deserve, because you are paying good money for their products. Make sure these products work for as many people as possible with all kinds of life-altering situations. You never know who of us can get into an accident or develop some kind of disease. Yeah, having those kinds of features baked into our favorite hardware is a really big key to making it work for almost everyone. Riley, did Mercedes say they don't want to integrate this? Yeah, Mercedes is very much pushing their own infotainment system. They've also really tried to leverage all these crazy extra screens, right? I say I would love to see that on it because I still think that Apple's operating system looks better, and I'm pretty sure it will actually be smoother. But yeah, you don't expect Mercedes to adopt it anytime soon. Unless people actually come out and say they hate Mercedes OS or whatever they call it these days, I don't think they're gonna try to implement this. Now, there is more Apple hardware stuff to talk about. However, I actually think that that will be good to be left for a future video because first of all, my voice is coming a little bit to an end, and I do want to read up on all that stuff a little bit more before I do this. So Mark Gurman has given us a little bit of insight into the iPhone situation coming by 2027. I think that will make a great video sometime later this week. Let me also make sure that I'm not missing like a brand new Power On newsletter, because today is the 18th and the last one was on May 11th. So let me refresh. Yeah. So seems like we're not getting one today. So hopefully if we get one tomorrow or the day after that, I'll be able to come in and actually summarize all of those reports together for you. And with that, the last story for today is actually another YouTube reaction, and that is for Android 16.
Well, my friend,
this is coming from 9to5 Google. I will not be super duper kind to just how extremely positive the video is. By the way, let me also just quickly show you Android 16, like the reaction people are trying to give. First of all, Sam Time, who is like known for making like parodies of tech stuff, saying it's just iOS. Tech Droider, which has always been very aggressive and being like a pro-Android outlet, to the point of mentioning Apple whenever they don't have to. First of all, this is a very short video, like less than 3 minutes. And even then, in the title, they had to put in like, it will put iOS to shame. So, well, a lot of people are giving very neutral things. I feel like there is a lot of passive aggressiveness built into Android 16, where people are really trying to tell you that it's not iOS. And yeah, so this is why the 9to5 Google video, even though it's extremely pro-Android and it's kind of trying to throw some shade at the iOS redesign, we're coming with iOS 19, which is so hilarious to me whenever people are trying to go by like by renders and early previews and shit like that, and they're taking one screenshot of something that has barely changed but then ignore everything that does. So yeah, I'll try to look into the Android ball review right now, the magic Android 16 ball, and we'll see how whether we agree on their takes or not.
Well, my friends, it's 100% official, as Google just announced their highly anticipated Android 16 overhaul during the Android show. And as someone that's used Android for the past 15 years or so, this is probably the biggest change we've seen in quite a long time.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a new Material U thing, but it's a new Material U thing. It's not nearly as big as when Material U was introduced. And of course, depending on which Android skin you're using, like One UI, you're not really guaranteed to be getting all those changes. Stuff like the control center already looks pretty different across most Android brands. So yeah, let's see.
We have a new design language, big changes to the core Pixel experience, and even Wear OS got some love in this update with a little mini overhaul as well. Needless to say, there is a ton that we need to go over, so real quick, let me give you a super simple rundown on everything you need to know, because your Pixel device is about to change in a pretty big way. As I mentioned, Google is changing things up in the Pixel world, and the main piece of this overhaul is their new Material 3 Expressive initiative. During the Android show, we saw our first official look at what this truly means.
So that is very important just for the baseline for how we got this. First of all, it leaked like a week before the Android-focused event. And second of all, I would have loved to just see this during Google I/O, but Google I/O now seems to be an AI conference, and fuck all regarding Android. So now we got an Android-specific reveal with the new design and stuff, and that basically asks you to keep paying attention for weeks, but that doesn't really work with Google, right? Like, I'm sorry, but like, I'm not trying to shit on like Google, but like even with Apple, I think if Apple had like 4 events for like one for macOS, one for iOS, one for iPadOS, I think it would result in distinctively smaller viewerships for each event. This is why Apple wants to put them all inside DubDub, even though they sometimes struggle to deliver on all those features. But like having Android separated by just a few weeks, if that, from Google I/O, that to me just suggests, oh, Google is really not that much interested in Android anymore. Even when they redesign it, they don't care to show it off on their biggest stage.
Google, their overarching goal here is to inject more emotion into the interface, making the Android platform and their services more engaging and easier to.
So I should say I like good animations. I like relatively colorful stuff. I think that just making shit more vibrant is not the same as making it more emotional. And the reason we know this is Android has had a ton of customization for years that allows you to make your device super vibrant and colorful. But most people just don't do it. I don't think that even the youth really wants that much. I honestly think that iOS 19 is almost guaranteed to get a more positive reception than this. Riley, it's almost pointless to watch this if you own a different brand Android. Only the functionality will carry over. And even then, right, some of the functionality might already exist in another Android skin. And then it's the question, does it double or does one override the other? So you basically have to always pay attention to like basically your specific brand. And even if you get the Pixel, like right now, I just wouldn't get the Pixel. I think that this bodes well for the Pixel 10, right? It finally having a 3nm based processor, supposedly some architectural changes. So it's really moving away from that Samsung crap. But it has gotten worse in other ways. It has fallen behind in terms of cameras, behind the iPhone, in many ways behind the Galaxy, in a lot of ways against the Chinese competition. So it's really hard, like, to look at this and think, oh my God, the Pixels are gonna get so much better. You know, that product with like what, 2% market share at best?
To use, which it does make sense if you think about it, because we spend so much of our lives interacting with these screens, and it seems like Google wants that time to be less utilitarian and more fun, to say the least. Material 3 Expressive is their comprehensive answer to this, and the most immediately noticeable aspect for us users will be the introduction of incredibly natural, almost springy, bubbly animations.
So, springy, bubbly animations, and I say this specifically not because we are the Apple channel here, but because this video later calls out Apple. And to bring up springy, bouncy animations, if you're gonna later critique Apple, is just hilarious to me, given that, like, for years, that kind of bounciness has actually been an Apple staple.
It's actually quite interesting to see this.
No, it's not that aggressive on iOS. Like, everything moves if you try to. I'm not even sure if I like this one. Honestly, I think it's a tad overreactive. It's not bad. I'm not gonna say that because I do think there's room for that kind of playfulness. But this almost looks too unserious, right? It almost looks like it's, you know, when like your teacher tells you to make a PowerPoint presentation, and they tell you to like integrate effects well and shit like that. But you have like a relatively boring presentation in class, so you just activate all kinds of different effects going from one slide to the other. And I feel like this is that. Like, this is them basically integrating more animations than they have to, because they were like, oh, what are we going to focus on? Oh, vibrantness and liveliness. And I'm like, I'm not sure. Nexus by different brands back in the day was a lot better than anything Google makes themselves. It specifically was also a lot cheaper, right? Even if it wasn't the best thing ever, at the very least, you knew you could get like a $500 product that competed at, well, you could get a $400 product that competed with $700 products. Obviously, everything has gone in price. And you can kind of maybe think about the Pixel 9a in that way, because at least the Pixel 9a has the same processor, which means for its price category, it's not as ridiculously underpowered as the Pixel 9 Pro or the Pro XL, which is absolutely atrocious once you start comparing it versus Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 devices, much less Snapdragon 8 Elite. It's terrible in comparison to the A17 chip, much less the A18 and A18 Pro. So yeah, it's like, I don't like where Google has taken their own brand. I think the things that like that multitasking bar, right? If anybody remembers when the iPhone X launched, and around that time, devices like the Galaxy S8 tried new paradigms with multitasking, Android basically rewrote that for basically all of it to work basically exactly like on iOS. And I think that this is basically a sneaky way to integrate a lot more iOS stuff, but without admitting that they are.
In action, UI elements almost appear to stick and react to each other with every single interaction, whether you're playing with sliders, flipping toggles, or even just dismissing notifications. There is a tangible, almost playful reaction to every tap, touch, and interaction, which I have to admit, my ADHD brain actually finds this incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, so obviously we know that how control center toggles are redesigned and stuff like that. Yeah, like the first generation Pixel Fold is just like, it's not really a product you should even consider. I know the Pixel Fold 2 or the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, isn't it that what it's called, right? Like, these are products that really need a brand new chip, or like, yeah, $400, especially for the first gen, is even too much to ask. You would have to pay me to use that crap.
You can immediately see how it's designed to be.
So this is one-to-one copied by iOS, and I know that obviously the in-widget like experience is also defined by the developers. So the developer is just going to take a lot of what they did for iOS and put it here. But my God, it just looks exactly like iOS.
More engaging because it adds an extra layer of depth and responsiveness that aims to break up the day-to-day monotony that can sometimes creep into using a smartphone. It's actually a similar philosophy to what I've enjoyed about OnePlus phones so much. Oxygen OS specifically is well known for that at this point, having these slick, visually appealing animations, and I think this is Google's...
But the things we just saw weren't just animations. Those were, well, some of those features were also already there, but like, you really, you're not going to mention how many of them were on iOS?
Way of bringing that same level of interactive polish to the core Android experience on Pixel. It makes the UI feel more playful, more fun to explore, and hopefully invoking that emotional impact that Google is aiming for so hard, which ultimately should be a good thing because a more responsive, engaging, and intuitively animated UI can...
So, I hate intuitiveness when it comes to animations. Like, yeah, there are ways in which you can make animations unintuitive, right? But like these animations are not more intuitive because they halfway start dragging your other notification, but then let go of it as you swipe off. I'm not saying even this looks bad, but calling it intuitive is weird when it actually in the beginning does the exact opposite, because it suggests that you might actually be dragging the other notification either to open it or to reply to it or to delete it. So no, whatever, like this is just gobbledygook talk. This is not really something that somebody that actually engaged with the actual pitch here. The animations could be prettier, more smooth, more fun even, but more intuitive? Not really.
Make your phone feel faster, more polished, and less like a cold tool and more like a dynamic expression. But it isn't just about new animations, as Google gave us a deeper insight to the core of Material 3 Expressive when it comes to their app design, as developers have new guidelines and updated
so basically
components to build
like
their apps with. For
new
starters, Material 3
icons
Expressive
and stuff like
provides
not
developers
even
with about
like for
15
apps,
or so
but
new
like
or
for system
updated components
toggles
to
and
build
stuff
with.
like that.
For us as consumers, that translates to things like redesigned icon buttons, more intuitive navigation bars and rails, clearer progress indicators, and so much more. Effectively, a more refined and consistent toolkit for app creators. This means apps in general should not only look better, but also behave more predictably and cohesively across the entire operating system. Another big aspect of this is a new motion physics system. This is what will power those alive, fluid, and natural feeling interactions and transitions I mentioned. For you, it means apps will respond to your touch.
I don't mind this, but like, yeah, the button colors are horrible, by the way. I hope there's some ways to customize it. And I hope it's not this is the problem. It ends up with like this is the problem with too much customization options. It just encourages people to go all crazy with certain design aspects and then tell me, oh, you know what? We can actually like you can redefine it for yourself. And I'm like, couldn't you do something at least like a little bit better for me so I don't have to like claw my eyes out? And here, like, look at this animation. And again, this is not something against Android. Apple does that sometimes too when some things take a little bit too much time to animate. But I've never seen something like this in iOS.
This is what will power those
Look
alive,
at this,
fluid,
not
and
this,
natural
the
feeling
next one.
interactions and transitions I mentioned. For you,
One,
it means
two,
apps
like,
will.
really? Why did I need so much time to see my freaking steps? I know that also like the text font size is like super large, which I guess is customizable. But like there's so much wasted space. At this point, you could be giving me actually like 2 graphs here or something like that. You could give me like a week graph and then a graph for over the years or something like that. Like, why? Why are you wasting both time here in how long it took to animate and then space by making it all so freaking large?
Respond to your touch in a more organic and less rigid way. Alongside this,
Yeah, and here, look. Oh, this one I can work with. Look at this freaking stupid. Oh, Jesus Christ. I thought I would just be reacting, but look. Why is this super round in a fully like rectangular, maybe slightly rounded off thing? Or look, it looks disconnected from the rest. It looks like it's cutting off this portion. Why is this not filling up everything? The art all the way. Hi, Mark. How are you doing? I think I remember your name, but I'm sorry. It's been a while. I'm good. I am a little bit riled up looking at some of these things being praised as like intuitive animations for Android 16. I think when I first saw the video, I only have paid attention to it more to the words than the video. But man, this is like a clear disconnect, right? Nothing in you actually have I believe you have 4 different slightly rounded rectangles here. Now this one is very half circular, right? I'm not sure if it matches the radius of this, but that's not so important. Then you have just a rectangle that is slightly rounded off for the compose button. Then you have pretty much a fully squared off with just the tiniest bit of rounding, a little bit of rounding. And then you have this very aggressive green, which I really don't see used in any other OS. And then this pink, garish pink, which is just so bad. These are weird colors to choose for these things. Like, even just historically, think about it. What do you associate with like a message, right? It's green or blue. Now archiving is green, but composing, which is basically writing a new email, which is basically writing a message, is pink. Yeah, Riley, the compose button is a crime. Dear AATW. Oh, yeah, I remember. I used to call you AATW. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long time. I've been away from social media as I was having my. You were having your exam today, so now I'm free. Well, congratulations. I hope your exams went well.
New topography styles are being introduced to better emphasize information hierarchy and highlight important action.
But the problem is you don't even explain to us what the hierarchy is, right? With iOS 7, for example, for all its problems back in the day, when you look at the Johnny Ive narrated video on iOS 7, I don't think we can watch it because it's gonna be like, but like when he says the word hierarchy, it clearly shows you what hierarchy is, right? For example, when you open up Control Center and you can still see through translucency the main OS and the main things happening under it. The same way, if you open up your keyboard and you scroll over it, you can see that things scroll under it. There are clear hierarchies that are visually identified. I have not seen anything here that suggests this level of like comprehensive understanding.
It's making it quicker and easier for
Also,
you to
like
understand.
all these colors, what are they? I guess this lilac pinkish thing is now their compose/write thing, but also a much lighter tone is used for system toggles. I don't get it. The only place this is acceptable is some Chinese knockoff Barbie edition flip phone. Yeah, and I first started reading your message, it said some Chinese. I thought it was just gonna say Chinese knockoff or whatever. But yeah, this wouldn't fly on like the Vivos or the Oppos. You know why? Because they like, for example, the iOS control center. They're just gonna copy that instead. AATW, my cousin works as a backend software engineer at Google. He's also not liking Android 16. Yeah, the problem is that I guess it depends what kind of engineer your cousin is, right? Usually when somebody says engineer, I associate it with much more with like code than design. So the design just feels like it was designed by a committee of like, you know, that clip of like, how you do fellow kids, right? And it's like a 50-year-old, I forget the name of the actor. Right, with a skateboard, and he's like doing like an undercover mission in a high school. It feels like this was designed by guys like that who thought, what do kids like? Kids like color, right? It's like, are we in the 90s? Am I getting like double-sized jean shorts with it?
On your screen and what does actually need your attention. Visually, developers will have access to a new set of 35 shapes for elements like
by the way, he mentioned intuitiveness. I challenge you guys to tell me what is the intuition that you have when seeing these shapes. Does any of that shape actually relay a feature to you? Like a triangle on the side to me is a play button. A heart to me is a like or a fitness thing. I guess photos are associated with flowers are associated with the Pictures app. But like, look at this. Why? And I'm not saying that you don't have those kinds of glyphs, but like, what about it is like it just looks random. My eyes are bleeding. Please turn this video off. After this, I'm actually like ending it. I've promised you guys to react sometimes this week to like more Apple hardware stuff, like what Mark Gurman is lining up. But man, maybe I should have reacted to that instead.
Avatars, image crops, and other decorative details inside these apps. This will allow for a more visual
Okay, it's super elongated. I guess that's fun for people who don't have fun in their real life.
Personality
and again, blue, lilac, purple, pink shit. We could have used this time to check the iOS leaks. I'm not sure we have one more iOS leak, and that's for the captured Wi-Fi things from Mark Gurman, where it's going to be much easier to like port. Basically, if you logged into like hotel Wi-Fi or something like that on your phone, it's basically just gonna come to all devices. And I think that there are some optimization to basically automate it so it's even easier on the first login. That's basically all we got. Everything else is kind of like a regurgitation of what we have already known. But yeah, I fully understand. Android 16 makes me angry too. The colors, right? It's like a bull seeing red. It's like we see these purplish tones and we're like, Jesus, we have to destroy this.
Variety in app design, moving away from a one-size-fits-all look. This is complemented by an expanded color range, which will help to sharpen.
So at least I guess we can choose between different colors, but like look at this color combination, for example. This makes you like not just want to claw at your eyes, but like stick something inside it and destroy the visual center in your brain. Why would I want every message I get to be like at some point a different color? I guess this is the color that old messages take, and then your own ones, and then the newest one has like a different color from the old ones? Is that the pitch? Maybe I should do some research. It cannot be actually this bad. I'm interested in all the WWDC Apple software except the WatchOS, because without the face reveals, it's boring. Yeah, WatchOS is also not getting, from what I understand, a big redesign this year, but probably next year. So I guess tvOS would kind of be the least interesting one, unless you think about it more as like a precursor to HomeOS, like what is going to be running on the home pad. But yeah, WatchOS, tvOS, those are usually the least interesting ones.
That visual hierarchy and clarify key actions, making UIs more scannable and understandable at a quick glance.
What? Like, you did you edit this video? What are you putting on the screen that makes everything easier to see at a glance? What about this is easier to see at a glance? By the way, that group chat visual layout looks exactly like iMessage. Who copied who here?
And one of the coolest bits is a built-in.
Oh, I guess that icon was for the clock. Wow. Okay.
Shape morph animation, allowing for these incredibly smooth and clean transitions between shapes on screen. It's a small detail.
I mean, none of what you showed was really that incredibly smooth. It just, one thing got a little bigger, then a little smaller. It's like, it's the kind of things that I don't even praise Apple for, because it's
that does add a little level of polish. These are just the most notable highlights, but all of these aspects combined give Android a much needed facelift. The deep
was it really much needed? I feel like with how much like individual Android vendors like redesign their skins almost like every 2 years.
The detail, from the physics of an animation to the new
This is like the OS for kids tablet. Oh yeah, true. That a lot of this, yeah, has like the vibe of like an actual like you know that like those Fire tablets that Amazon does, but those specifically for kids. Like my nephew used to have one before he got an iPad. And yeah, that's the exact vibe. It's like unnecessary colors. It's very big things, so a child with like less motor function can press it. And it's like fun, I guess, icons and shit. Yeah, that's actually a really good call out.
Noticeable here. By providing these powerful and well-researched tools to develop.
And well-researched. Wow, we know it's well-researched.
Google is certainly paving a way for a new generation of Android apps that are not only beautiful, but also more intuitive, engaging, and...
Again, at no point has he actually called out something that looked more intuitive. I'm not even saying it's not, but the video doesn't actually provide me that baseline.
Ultimately more enjoyable to use, and that's the big why behind Material 3 Expressive. Obviously, we'll have to get our hands on some of these.
What's on the right? The old alarm interface that looks exactly like iOS?
And we'll have to see how developers adopt these new principles inside their apps, but the foundation that Google is laying is very promising. Now, building on that foundation of Material 3 Expressive, Google is rolling out some significant core changes to the Pixel experience itself, and this is where things get really exciting for current and future Pixel owners. First, we get a real, genuine look at that redesigned quick settings and notification panel that has been so heavily rumored and leaked. It looks like it will feature resizable tiles that can actually...
But once again, I really dislike having these controls right on top, but then other controls hidden somewhere else. I do really like, for all its shortcomings, I do like that One UI 7 separates control center and notification center the way that iOS does. You can argue that this might be a muscle memory thing that looks more intuitive for me because of iOS. I would argue it has more to do with just the fact that it looks cluttered once you actually put them all here. It's not like I'm gonna criticize everything. Like the clear all button is something cool, and then I assume this is like history for like your notifications and probably some notification controls. That's cool. I wouldn't mind Apple integrating that. It's not like I'm criticizing these things for being Android. I'm criticizing, look, why, like, I know this is separated because, oh, this is your notifications and this is control center, basically, quick toggles, whatever you're gonna call them. But like, man, it looks so unintuitive to me. Is this coming to Google Apps? Because I use some like Gmaps. I don't think that Google is always going to integrate the latest design principles from Android to iOS. But yeah, I actually wouldn't be surprised if some of this shit trickles down or trickles up to iOS.
Change shape when toggled on and off. The brightness bar is noticeably blockier now with a more prominent slider handle, which should make it easier to grab and adjust more accurately. And a major visual change, there's now a background blur effect when you pull down the notification shade, allowing you to subtly see your wallpaper and its respective color theme, which will also carry over to the Recent Apps menu, by the way, adding a nice layer of depth and context with the operating system.
Okay, I guess that one is kind of context. I mean, we used to have iOS notification centers that were either completely overlays, now it's basically just a lock screen, or they actually made the thing transparent, so translucent. So I guess we are kind of getting some of that in Android now.
Personally, I do think it looks great, don't get me wrong, and
I really don't like this thing that interrupts it. Don't get me wrong, I fully get what they were going for. I just don't think it looks cohesive with the rest.
Trust me, I know many Android skins like those from OnePlus and Samsung have been incorporating this Gaussian blur.
Is this just a one-to-one copy of the iOS weather widget?
Background as of late.
Like, come on, like, is that really one-to-one, basically?
And
like, I guess the amount of information is a little bit different.
The concept itself is very iOS-like, but I do feel Google's implementation is different here, and it's a little bit more distinct, thoughtfully integrated with the Material U aesthetic, which is something that certainly sets it apart. That said, there are a few more changes too, like the lock screen is also getting a slight redesign. When you have notifications on your screen, the day and the date will shift to the right corner of the at-a-glance widget.
Oh yeah, that is the right side. True.
When your lock screen is clear of notifications, these elements will be positioned neatly underneath the full clock, just
okay, that's not bad.
Above the fingerprint sensor circle, which is just a nice redesign in general. We also got to see a bit more about the live update feature coming to Android 16. If you didn't already know, live updates is a brand new class of notification.
Brand new. Good to know.
For delivery, rideshare, or navigation apps where you can track the progress in real time without having to actually open the app itself. Today, we saw that it's available for the always on display mode, which is a nice touch, and overall, with the massive rise of popularity from these food delivery apps, this is a logical addition that should get a lot of usage with Android users.
Wait, are you really not gonna mention that it's
Personally, I view this overall design shift to be...
Wait, you really didn't mention that it's like one-to-one copied from iOS? Really?
really nice to say the least. It's a great starting point, and while ambitious for sure, it will likely take Google a few iterations over the next couple of years to perfectly hone every aspect. But what they've shown so far is a strong foundation. It's vibrant, it seems fun to use, and it does have that look of being genuinely engaging. What's really important here though is that I believe Google is significantly ahead of the curve with this redesign, especially
So this is a comment based on absolutely nothing.
with the persistent rumors that Apple is also gearing up for a
So this redesign, by the way, the icons are not even new. We like, if you actually know what you're talking about, you would know that none of this is the full redesign here.
major UI redesign with iOS 19. Google's vision should hopefully be out and available to customers first, and frankly, based
And these comments, like, this should be hopefully out first. What does that mean? What do you gain from it being first? Shouldn't you be focused on it just being better?
off what I've seen so far, Google's Material 3 Expressive looks way more engaging than the proposed iOS 19 concept.
Okay, so something that you have never tried is way more engaging than something else you probably will never try. Thank you very much for that incredibly insightful comment.
Steps floating around out there. To me, it's clear that Google's design and engineering teams have been working incredibly hard on this. Even if the progress wasn't overall super visible during the initial Android 16 betas, they were certainly
that's how Google works.
doing a lot of work in the background that we just didn't see until now. One more thing I forgot to mention, though, is that we also got a glimpse of how this new design will translate to Wear OS.
So, yeah, basically almost the same thing. That's the most boring part of the video. Yeah, it got actually a little bit angrier and more enthused, I guess, about covering this than I thought I would. My voice is starting to go away, so I will give you a brief glimpse into... have to go to Bloomberg. Into... what I will be covering this week. So let's see if we got a new Power On newsletter. No. So I will be looking into Mark Gurman's predictions for Apple's like 2027 products. That includes new leaks about things like memory technology, camera cutouts. Some of that stuff is also a little bit contradictory internally or externally, I guess, depending on how you're going to look at Apple rumor coverage. So I'll try to do some good research into what exactly is being predicted so we can actually go one product by the other. And then, of course, if we get another Power On newsletter in the meantime, I would like to incorporate that too. We are now just 3 weeks away, basically, from Dub 2025. So at that point, I would expect probably more stuff coming from Front Page Tech, more stuff from Mark Gurman, some new stuff from Min-Chi Kuo. So... yeah, I think that will be fun, and I'll try to just also leave that for just so we have more to talk about in the future, right? If I just go through everything today, first of all, I am going to be low energy by the end, and it's just going to leave us less fun stuff to talk about throughout the week, which I don't think will be ideal. We are already more than 2 hours into the video. Thank you to anybody who found the video, who joined, who commented, who left a comment milestone, a membership milestone. As always, if you haven't yet done so, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it. Don't just comment in the live comment section, also comment in the regular comment section. You can become a channel member right here on YouTube. Shout out to Angelica, Steve, and Max Maximus, who are MarkTech Pro Max supporters here on YouTube. And you can also become a supporter over on Patreon. The link for that is in the description of this channel. As always, let me also know what you would like to see me cover next. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much. This is MarkTech, tuning out.